So welcome everybody to our webinar today, which is titled The Truth About Mental Health First Aid. The reason why I've decided to host this webinar is because following a few industry events I attended last year, health and safety events, through conversations I've been having through threads that I've been seeing on LinkedIn, there's been a lot of discussion around the effectiveness of MHFAs on site. And I'm glad these discussions are having and they're being had, because I think there's a lot of myths about MHFA that need to be busted. I think there's some misguided expectations about what MHFA is and what it can do and what it is there for. So I'm glad now that there's more kind of studies and discussion so that just to really bust those myths. And that's what this session is all about. And by the end of this session, I hope that you have a little bit more clarity about what mental health first aid is and really what it is not, how also it might fit within an existing wellbeing strategy, and how best to recruit and support your MHFAs, which I think is really important too. So who am I? I do know some lovely faces here online today, but for those of you who don't know me, I am Tricia Wilkie. This photo was obviously taken a little while ago, and you can see that the length and the hair has changed somewhat. This was taken just pre-pandemic. I'm on a very big stage here presenting to a few hundred people. Now, years ago, this would not have been a possibility. And I'll tell you why. Because I used to live with an anxiety disorder called panic disorder, where I was enduring daily, frequent, and extremely debilitating, almost I would go as far to say quite disabling panic attacks. I also have cycled through clinical depression a few times. I found myself in crisis a couple of times, and you might not see that from that image of that person on the stage looking quite happy and confident. I can see some signs in my posture there that are kind of giving it away, that the work that I had to put in to kind of enable me to get up on that stage, even being online doing the work I'm doing as I am today, would not have been a possibility a while ago, a few years ago. But we are all innately resilient human beings who can learn to adapt and change in the face of adversity. We can recover from even serious mental illness and come through the end of that much wiser and stronger for it. All of the experiences that I've had, I now see as my superpower. It's what led me to and inspired me to create this company, the Mind Hub, a health and wellbeing training agency. It's myself and a passionate team of associate trainers who all have a desire and passion to just help people to get the most out of life, to support their own well-being through skills based, steeped in the science. And so that's what I did basically. My insight, the skills that I learned along the way, led me to take further training, become an instructor member for Mental Health First Aid England. Mindful-based cognitive therapy techniques helped me to overcome my anxiety and manage my depression and manage my symptoms on a daily basis. And I draw on all of those skills and weave those into everything that I do. So I predominantly take care of the mental and emotional pillar of wellbeing in the Mind Hub. And you'll see on the website that we have a fantastic team of associate trainers who are all experts in their own field, helping people to take better care of their sleep, their physical health, their financial health too. Okay, so here is just, I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but just to give you an idea of the types of organisations that we work with. And it's very broad. We work with organisations in the private and the public sector, all shapes and sizes. Probably one of our, the contracts that I'm really most proud of, I've partnered with Health Education England for the last 2 years and have personally trained at least 200 MHFAs now working in primary care. So that could be anyone in, say, GP practice, from the GP to the GP receptionist, to the clinical pharmacologist, to the wellbeing social prescribers. Anyone working within primary care can come onto my course and train as an MHFA. Okay, so what are we going to be discussing today? First off, I think it's important to start at the beginning and define what we mean by that term mental health and look at the impact that our mental health can have in the workplace. We'll then have I'll give you some insight into, well, what is mental health first aid? What's the expectations and limitations of the role? Excitingly and importantly, and very timely now, we now have an ISO standard, a framework to help organizations manage the psychosocial risks in the workplace. It's been a long time coming. I'm really pleased that we now have this framework. So I'll talk about what that framework is. It's quite new, even chatting with a lot of my contacts who work in the environmental health and safety space are not quite sure what this is all about yet, but I'll try and talk you through that. And also, just let you know how MHFA might fit within that standard. It definitely has a place. And then I'll talk about strategy for recruitment and ongoing support of your MHFA team, which for me is really, really important, that people, organisations that I work with are very clear on, best practices for that, so that you end up with the most meaningful, committed team of MHFAders who are walking into the training with their eyes open, knowing what they're getting themselves in for. And then I feel happy that there is strategy in place to support your MHFAders going forward. That's very important. So let's begin at the beginning. How would we define that term mental health? Just perhaps have a private reflect on, what does that term mean to you? And how do you feel that your own mental health perhaps influences on the actions that you take every day? Have you even considered perhaps that mental health and the state of your mental health does have an impact? And just thinking about how, what that impact might look like for you. Now, sometimes when I talk about mental health and I ask people to share, how that they would define that, a lot of people will say mental health means mental illness. And it has quite a negative connotation. And I think this is kind of feeding into part of that stigma and is what puts people off perhaps talking about mental health and specifically their own mental health too. But really, that term mental health is a very broad umbrella term that encompasses the varying levels of our mental health. It includes very positive mental well-being. It includes quite severe mental illness and the fluctuating levels of poor mental health in between. And those levels do vary quite a lot. Our mental health is very fluid and changes over time. There is no health without mental health. It's not just physical health, it's mental health too. And together, as we are whole holistic beings, the state of our physical and our mental health and our social health and actually our financial health all feed into our overall well-being. So it makes good sense that we take really good care of our mental health, just the same way as we would our physical health and social health too. I really like this definition by the World Health Organization, just stating really that it's a state of well-being in which enables someone to actualize what they wish to achieve, in their daily life. I like to think of our mental health as shaping the lens through which we perceive ourselves and the world around us. And this lens changes, sometimes it changes for me moment by moment and day by day. But different life events, the weather, our physical health, the demands that are being placed on us at work and at home, events that are going on around the world, so many factors can influence the lens through which we perceive ourselves and the world around us. Our mental health impacts everything that we do. It influences the types of thoughts we have, our emotions. Those then affect how we behave, how we perform. It influences all the actions that we take. And depending on from which lens we were operating, those actions can lead to very different consequences. The state of our mental well-being also feeds into our sense of self-worth, our self-esteem. And so you can see how perhaps when, that lens is not so good, particularly for our people in the workplace, how this can really impact on performance. When this lens is perhaps now a little more negative, people are starting to second guess themselves. Performance, creativity, engagement is going down, perhaps, despite more hours that a person might be putting in. We might see issues with conduct arising, and perhaps more safety issues coming to light, for example. So the impact, now I'm going to share with you some stats here about the impact of mental health in the workplace. I love a stat, I love data. Everything I do is steeped in research, it's based on the science. However, a stat only gives you a snapshot in time. Yeah, it's dependent on who took part in that study at that particular time. And, each moment is a new moment. So as soon as a study is published, of course, new data arrives. But, I think they are good just to give you an idea of prevalence. So you may have seen this stat. It is thought that around 1 in 6 working age people are living with symptoms associated with a diagnosable mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. But you'd never know. We're all fantastic maskers. Mental health, poor mental health, mental ill health can be very difficult to spot. The only way really to know how someone is doing is to ask and have these more open conversations. To do that, particularly in the workplace, we have to work quite hard to create psychological safety in which people feel more able to open up and be, and respond in a very genuine way when they're being asked, how are you and how are you feeling and how can we support you best? Deloitte suggests this figure is perhaps much higher, and I've just seen some latest research actually suggests that figure perhaps is more like 1 in 5, but who really knows when we consider some of these other stats what that true figure really is. Now, for me, it's more about the human cost of mental health, but I think if you're having to state the case for implementing MHFAs or running mental health awareness sessions in your organisation, certainly your C-suite will want to, well, what are the figures? How is this going to affect our bottom line? The latest figure that we have, Deloitte suggests that the cost to organisations is 56 billion. That has risen from 45 billion in 2019. And you can see that compared against the cost to organisations from physical illness and injury, which sits at, I say just, it's still 20.7 billion. It's rather a lot, but quite a difference, for the cost due to mental health. So that latest figure there, the 20.7, was taken from the latest HS&E report. The positive news is that Deloitte also suggests that the return on investment on a robust, well thought out wellness strategy that includes interventions such as mental health first aiders and wellbeing champions is around 5 to 1 on investment. So I think that's quite positive. This study here, I know absenteeism is a real problem in workplaces. Presenteeism actually is 3 times more costly than absenteeism. For those who are unaware of what that term presenteeism is, it means people who are present at work, but perhaps should be absent to take care of their well-being. They're sick, their mental health perhaps needs a little bit of self-care at home, but people do tend to push on through, but this does have a real impact on your performance. We can't push and perform 100% of the time. If we don't listen to the warning signals that our body has given us that we need to take a break, we will then start to drop off the cliff down the other side of that stress curve, which I'm sure you've all seen, and this is where our performance now is being impacted. And so slowly, or perhaps much quickly, people will begin to fall off that cliff and head towards burnout. In this study that I took this from, this was a study between Vitality and Rand, 26,000 people who in 2019 admitted that they had been working and present when actually they felt they should have been absent. Now, we know that 1 in 5 people will take a day off through stress, but this study by Mind showed that 90% of people calling in sick through stress will cite a physical reason for their absence. Yeah, so when you look at that, who knows really, what the true cost to businesses are through mental health, just how many people are suffering in the workplace. Okay, with this study, this was a study by UKG. Just under 3,500 people took part in this study. 71% of those people said that their work stress negatively impacted their home life. Now, this doesn't surprise me because our mental health is with us wherever we go. We try as best we can to compartmentalize our feelings, leave them at the door of the workplace, but ultimately, it's with us all of the time. And as we saw before, the state of our mental well-being impacts on our thoughts, our feelings, and all the actions that we take. So, of course, what's going on in work will absolutely have an impact on a person's home life. And 78% of people say the stress negatively impacts their performance at work. Yeah, it's a no-brainer, really, isn't it, when you think of it? We have a duty of care, obviously, within our organisations to ensure that people do not become unwell due to their work. It's a difficult thing to manage, isn't it? It's not just work that adds into your stress. It is a person's home life. It's events that have happened all the way from their birth that might lead them to be more resilient or vulnerable to stress. It's genetic factors, it's environment factors, where a person lives, how stable they feel financially, the relationships that they have. So many things feed into our stress bucket and affect our mental health. But certainly, a person spends majority of their time in the workplace. It provides a great place for us to, as best we can, provide physically and psychologically safe environments in which to work, and perhaps provide some interventions, prevention, and more reactive care as well to support people with their well-being. Now, in that same report that I spoke about, 69% of those people said that their line manager actually had the biggest impact on their mental health, more than their doctor and equal only to their partner. And I've put, a figure here spinning lots of plates because this is our line managers, isn't it? They're already juggling a lot in their role. Their roles, their remits are very broad. They have responsibilities above and below. So to train all your line managers to be mental health first aiders might not be appropriate because they don't have the time to really dedicate to that role. But your line managers are most definitely in a great place to spot perhaps some red flags that their team member might not be doing so well, and at least open up a conversation or go ask an MHFA maybe to have a chat to then direct them towards that more professional help, or to at least go and have that initial chat with an MHFA who can then direct them to any professional help. So we do have bespoke training as well, more tailored towards your line managers, so that they can have a little bit of training, feel more well equipped, but are not having to undertake the commitment to that role. So what is mental health first aid? Well, well-being. And for those of you who have been given the remit of well-being in your role, it can be a bit like the Wild West sometimes, can't it? It's very complex well-being, it's very broad. And as such, mental health first aid in isolation is not a panacea to all those issues that you may have around solving the well-being and improving the well-being of your organization. However, MHFA is about having a committed team of like-minded, well-meaning people who have a genuine interest to support others, who are willing and able to provide a non-judgmental, empathetic, listening ear to someone who is going through some difficult times, and who feel able to manage that and signpost people towards the most appropriate professional help. Your MHFA team is much like your physical first aider team. They are not professionals, but they are there to provide early frontline support to prevent illness and to promote a good recovery by linking people in with that professional support. Okay, so mental health first aid, and as Deloitte suggests, can be, a key part of your overall well-being strategy, but in isolation it is not enough. And I think that's where there's been a lot of misunderstanding about MHFA and the expectations about MHFA, that's what it's there for, and it's really not, but it is a key part of your strategy. It really helps to raise awareness of mental health throughout your organization, which then helps to reduce stigma, and that helps to increase the sense of psychological safety in the organization. By creating the psychological safety, it also helps people to have confidence, just to have more natural conversations. It hasn't always got to be so formal, make an appointment, but just getting people used to just open up more general conversations, maybe by the coffee machine, just always, not just seeing each other as work personas, but meeting each other on that human level and just having more human to human interactions. By having mental health awareness running through your organization as well, it helps to promote that fairness and understanding. It really supports your DE&I initiatives when we have more understanding of different cultures, different backgrounds, that then might lead us to have very different views about mental health, and to respect all of them. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of these, but very importantly here at the bottom, as I said before, MHFA is about early intervention, and we'll see how this fits in the framework, how it can be quite a primary intervention. It's there not just as a reactive response to people who are unwell, it can really help to promote, and prevent people sliding into illness. Very importantly, MHFA does not, and very important, and this is why recruitment and recruiting in the right way is so important, because it's good to have an interest in mental health, but if you have people who really want to become therapists or counsellors, MHFA is not for them. We are not here to counsel anyone. We are not here to prescribe any course of treatment or diagnose anyone with any mental health condition. Have to be very clear about that. We do not replace the need for professional help, but what we do see, and there is the Mentor study, University of Nottingham did a study which showed that workplaces who have MHFAs on site see generally an increase in engagement with EAP systems, because people are being signposted more towards that. So, and for me, I really feel that MHFAs can provide that missing link between someone feeling concerned about themselves and accessing professional help. It can be quite daunting to go to your GP, pick up the phone to the EAP and say that you've got worries and that you're concerned about yourself. MHFAs, they're that friendly face, that friendly listening ear, who can say, I'm so pleased you come to talk to me. I think you might benefit. There's no harm in just picking up the phone. Just do it. You're always in control every step of the way. It gives people confidence to take that leap, that first important step to professional help. MHFA does not fulfill any organization's obligation of managing those psychosocial risks at workplace. But as I say, it can be a key part of the strategy. It is not responsible for changing organizational culture, but again, it can really influence when you show that you're committed, and you continually promote your MHFA to team. You continually show that you have an interest in supporting people's well-being slowly over time. You can begin to change culture and create more safety. It most certainly is not a tick box. If you want to work with me, I will very strongly encourage you to follow perhaps a strategy and pathway, a process that really helps you to recruit in the right way and support your MHFAders ongoing. It really is an ongoing commitment. So this ISO 45003 standard, bit of a mouthful there, just about got it out. If you're in the environmental health and safety space, this standard will sound maybe quite familiar to you. The ISO 45001 is the standard for managing physical risk. So ISO is the International Organization of Standardization. They are a independent international non-governmental body that set lots of global standards that have been developed by experts to really support people manage risks within the workplace. So this framework standard was developed in 2021, I think largely off the back of going through COVID. I think really propelled the need to have more mental health provision in workplaces, because we were seeing absolutely an impact, and that was just accelerated by the pandemic. But like I said, it was a bit of a wild west. There was no kind of frameworks to kind of work within. So thankfully now we have this framework, because just like physical risk factors, the accumulation of psychological, psychosocial risk can have a real impact on a person's health, physical and mental health. So in this standard, they identify 3 risk factors: how work is organised, social risk factors, and environmental risk factors. I'm not going to go into this in great detail. You can look on the iso.org website for more information about this. Within that, they have devised a hierarchy of controls for managing psychosocial risk. Again, another bit of a mouthful, but I think I'm doing okay in getting that out. So the 3 controls are: the primary control is around well-being promotion. Yes, there's a lot of talk about the effectiveness of well-being strategies, but again, it's not enough just to run a mindfulness session once a month, or once a week at the organization. It's not enough to have a yoga session here or there, or to run a nutrition workshop. They are fantastic as part of an ongoing promotion plan. And for me, I always encourage people to don't just give people permission to attend. I know you can't really make it mandatory, but get your line managers involved, have them lead by example, manage, assess the metrics as well, the value that you're getting from those, and all of those will really help that strategy to become much more effective. So MHFA can really play a part in this primary intervention to raise awareness, help people to recognise and spot those signs, and help guide them towards actions that we can all take to support well-being. So the secondary tier here, the secondary control, is something that you as an organisation, that's much more falls within your remit to kind of manage those risks, identifying what the risk factors are, and being in communication with your teams to what those might be. How MHFA might also play a part in this standard is in that reactive kind of support. So here in this tertiary control, this is about, okay, how can you support people who have become unwell? What I would love to see is all organisations having in-house counsellors on site, or having ready access to a counsellor, having a good EAP system, employee assistance programme, robust private healthcare. Also your MHFAders, whilst we're not here to provide professional help, we can provide that interim cover while someone is waiting perhaps to access that professional help. Okay, so this is how I believe that MHFA fits within this new ISO standard. So strategy, recruitment, delivery, and support. For me, it's definitely a process. This is definitely tried and tested with many of my clients, and it really does mean that we end up with the best committed team of MHFAders possible. So first off, I would suggest having a discovery call to talk about your existing strategy, what's working, what's not working, how this kind of training might fit within your strategy. Is MHFA right? Or perhaps are some other options more suitable for your organization? What are your objectives and timescales? Typically, I might run something like a mental health awareness, understanding mental health workshop, which is suitable, pitched at all levels throughout the organization. So in this workshop, you can have an unlimited number of attendees join this session. It can be run in-house or online. It can be a great springboard for any mental health initiatives that you want to launch. It can help you to re-promote any of your in-house supports and campaigns that you have going. You can use it as a springboard to launch the recruitment process to recruit your MHFAders. And it's something for everybody. So following that session, you may gather some interest from people wishing to become an MHFAder. This is a part of the MHFA England offering. This is something that I've defined myself because I don't want anyone walking into a session and then dropping out because they wasn't aware of the commitment to the role. They didn't understand the depth that we were going to go to in talking about mental health, and it might not be right for them at that time, and maybe their desires and intentions to be an MHFAder don't really align with what it really is. We're not here to be counselors or therapists, we're frontline support. So in this orientation session, I kind of cover all of that: the roles, the expectations, the limitations of the role, the commitment to the role. And in that outline, the recruitment process. It's very interactive. And from that, you will have people come out of there, chomping at the bit to become an MHFAder and want to start. Or you might have people saying, this sounds great, but it's not the time for me right now. Actually, I'd like some kind of training, but this is in too much depth. I need something perhaps a little bit less. Following that, you will go through the recruitment of your MHFAders. I can give you some guidance on how to best do that, but I would invite people from across the organization. Try to have people from different departments. You're representing people from all different backgrounds so that there's at least someone in your team that someone may feel that they can relate to. The Health and Safety Executive recommends, it's not mandatory to have MHFAders on site, but the Health and Safety Executive recommend that you have at least the same number of mental health first aiders as you do as physical first aiders. When you have your applicants in, I would discuss with the line managers, what their thoughts and feelings on this. Are they clear on the expectations of this person? If they become an MHFAder, are they on board with that? Do they think they're suitable? And go ahead and interview and recruit your team. We can have up to 16 on each course, minimum of 8 and a maximum of 16. So then we deliver the mental health training in whatever form that might be. From that orientation session or that awareness workshop, you might define that you have a need for more general awareness suitable for all levels. You might have a need for your SLT, your line managers, your C-suite perhaps, and as well as having your MHFAder team. Okay, and certainly we can create and have created many bespoke courses to suit your individual requirements. Ongoing support is hugely important to me. You're asking a lot of your MHFAders. We want to make sure that they're happy in their role and that they feel supported. So I like to help people set up what I call, well, what is a community of practice, which is where a group of people come together and continue to learn and support each other through sharing experiences. It's a very informal and organic kind of group. I do tend to help out in the first couple of community of practices just to get people into the flow of those. I do encourage someone from HR to sit in on those in case any HR related questions maybe pop up in those sessions. Encourage people to come together as often as they like. Some people come together monthly, some people perhaps it's quarterly. You can support by giving people the time and the resources to enable them to carry out their role by effectively communicating them and their services, giving people permission to perhaps take a break. If they're going through something difficult themselves, they won't be able to give the best of themselves to the role. So having permission to step down from that, I think, is really important. And for someone to kind of monitor and manage people who are stepping out of the role temporarily, permanently. People may leave the organization and move on. So continually monitor those levels and remembering to offer refresher training to your MHFAders. Every 3 years is the recommendation. And certainly with MHFA England, they will need to refresh every 3 years to continue access to their benefits. So those benefits now, MHFA, that course was revamped in September 22. It's a much more improved course. It's fantastic. And the benefits that you get now from MHFA England, I think are quite invaluable. You get really good value with this. You're given an app, which it's a fantastic repository of helpful resources that people can signpost people towards. In there is a wealth of learning, ongoing support for continual learning, and that, I think, the value on that is huge. There's lots of toolkits, campaigns that people can use here. There's lots of revision, live webinars for continual learning, which you might want to draw on actually within some of those community of practice sessions to kind of revisit that content. We encourage your MHFAders to support each other, to contact their own EAP service. MHFA England also have a deal with Shout, which is a text service that you can text the word Shout. Anyone can text the word Shout to 85258 to receive support. Now, as an MHFAder, you can now text Shout, let them know that you're an MHFAder, and they are well prepared to talk to you about a conversation that you might have had with someone. Maybe you're looking for a bit of reassurance. Did I apply the first aid framework correctly? Did I ask those questions? Did I do enough? Of course, they absolutely would offer. Sometimes we just need that extra reassurance. Yeah. And there might be something that they want to talk about that they don't feel comfortable talking about with, say, a fellow MHFAder in the workplace. So that text service Shout, I think, is a wonderful peer support service now available. And of course, it's there for people to talk through their own feelings as well, following, a potentially distressing conversation that they might have had. Okay, conscious of time now. I'm going to throw the floor open now just for the last kind of 5 minutes for questions. I can see there's something in the chat. I haven't read it yet. I'm also just going to talk you through an offer that we have. If following this training, you think, okay, I'd like to find out some more, please get in touch with me. There's a QR code there. You can contact me, email or via LinkedIn. But for anyone who books some training following this session, we are going to give away either a complimentary 1-hour understanding mental health workshop or an orientation session. That's usually £500 for that session. So that's just a small offering from us. But for now, you're probably tired of me talking now. So I'll stop and I'll give the floor over to any questions that people may have. So feel free to either pop those into the chat or to come off mute. And yes, thank you, Sophie, for saying that, that all the resources and stats are in the presentation. So I will be sharing a PDF of these slides along with a recording, and in the back of the slide set there will be references to all of those stats that I have mentioned. So over to you. Any questions for me? It could be about mental health. It could be about mental health first aid. It could be about an issue that you're trying to perhaps overcome currently. Okay, Lucy says, I'm wondering about opening up conversations about mental health with staff from cultures where there is a taboo topic. Thanks, Lucy. Yeah, well, I think actually just the fact that you're cognizant that it can be a taboo topic in certain cultures is a great start. Yeah, so on the MHFA course, we have a big section around the inequalities and stigma and discrimination that exist in mental health, determinants in a person's life that might influence how more at risk they might be to developing mental health, and the difficulties in access that they can have in receiving support. And a lot of that, wrapped up in that, is from people from marginalized groups, fall into a lot of those categories. So we talk about how we approach that conversation. And I think really as an MHFA is we teach people to recognize that you might have a judgment. You might think, well, why do you feel that way? Or why are you reluctant to access support? But you also then just, okay, maybe this person's had an experience. Yeah, this is a value, a thought, an opinion that's been passed down, being understanding people's reluctance and where they're coming from. So we talk about being able to step out of what we call your own frame of reference to be open to those other possibilities, and how to come to all conversations without judgment and empathy, and being able to take yourself out of your shoes into another person to really help you to accept where they're coming from. Sarah says, when I've looked at courses, a lot are now online. Is that as effective as face-to-face training? Just thinking about role play. So before COVID, MHFA was only a face-to-face option. Consequently, my business folded in March 2020, and then it was reinvigorated when MHFA England brought out an online product, and then it was all online. And now I'm seeing a trend, people more coming back to face. Now, I have delivered countless, I've trained hundreds and hundreds of people now online and face to face over these last few years. My personal preference will always be face to face. Yeah, because of the nature of the topic we're talking about, I could keep everyone safe. There's more of an energy and buzz. I've got everybody's attention. I can guarantee that they're not also on Teams, checking their emails and what have you. Doesn't mean to say they're not going to disengage face to face. Of course, we do. That's the nature of the mind, but I have a little more control over that and having people's attention. So my preference would always be face to face. However, online is a fantastic option, particularly if your organization is spread out and you want to bring people together. It does work and it is effective. I think perhaps the experience is more enhanced and enjoyable if it's face to face. And for some people, online, helps people to come on board. Maybe coming into a face-to-face situation might be quite difficult for people. So it definitely works for some better than others. But yeah, if you have a conversation with me, I will always push for face-to-face, but absolutely can deliver online too. Okay, hopefully that's helped to answer your questions there. If you have a question that maybe you didn't want to ask in this session, or maybe it's something that has come to you after on reflection, please do get in touch. Okay, I'm always happy just to have a chat, bounce some ideas off me, talk through any issues that you might be having, and I'm always here to help people where I can. But if that is all, and that's all the questions for now, then just want to say thank you very much for being with me here today. Please do get in touch, check us out on the website, connect with me on LinkedIn. We are, specialists in mental health first aid, and we do lots of other wonderful things too. But for now, I say Thank you, goodbye, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.